Shalom. Welcome, listening family. I'll be your host for this discussion. My name is Adiel, and I thank you for being here on behalf of the Universal Temple of Israel, the Universal Temple of Yahweh. Now, I decided we're going to do this outside. I love the outdoors, but the Creator is, he does his thing. He has his way in the winds, and it might be letting down out here in a little bit. So if I pause this video, I'll let you know, but we'll move to somewhere a little drier, okay? So we're going to go ahead and start this one off with a prayer to our Heavenly Father, which is the Lord's Prayer in Hebrew. Tefillah. Abenu Sheba Shemayim, Yikadeh Shemeaka, Tabu Makaterka, Yaze Rizonka, Kiba Shemayim Kem Ba'aretz, Elekem Kukenu, Tain Lanu Hayom, Uslak Lanu, All Katienu, Kimash Sol King, Gamanaknu, Lykotam Lanu, Leal Tefenu, Ladeni Sayom, King Asenu, Min Hara, Kilaka, Habamlaha, Bea Gibara, Bea Tifiereth, Leolame, Olamin, Sila. So, we've been talking about the law lately, and specifically, I want to go ahead and talk about the law in respect to the fact that we're getting ready to soon be heading into the 7th month. And those of you who are familiar with the law understand that coming into the 7th month means that we're getting ready to reach the halfway point in the year, and then we're going to reach the end of the festive season in the Hebrew culture. We will get ready to have Memorial Blowing of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles. Specifically, Day of Atonement in the sense that it's our opportunity to change course, right? And this, of course, follows the solar phenomena of the sun and the length of daylight versus nighttime changing course. So I thought it important that we also understand the importance of being able to change course, right? Every year we get a chance to repent collectively as a nation, and we call that the Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippurim in the Bible. It's important for us to understand sometimes it's not what we're doing that's wrong, sometimes it's how we're doing it. And so we have to learn how to change our perspective and change what we do, and we might find success where we previously had failures. It kind of reminds you of the story where the disciples were fishing on one side of the boat and they were told to cast their nets on the other side. It wasn't their fishing that was wrong. It wasn't where they were that was wrong. It's just that they were on the wrong side of their boat. So I want to talk about a few aspects of our own personal lives that we should always be willing to look at. Okay? So there's 4 aspects I want to really look at. 3 of them are core. 1 of them is additional to this, but the 4 aspects are health, wealth, spirituality, and our personal relationships. So right about now, as I'm getting ready to turn 40, I decided that I really want to take another look at my health and say, are there any things that I can do, any changes that I could make to improve it? Once your health is gone, it's hard to get it back. So I've been making some steps personally, man. And, I want for my brother what I want for myself. So, the improvements that I've seen, I want to see those improvements in the lives of all of my family in different aspects of their lives, the aspects that they may be lacking in. So let's talk a little bit about health first. So, we know about health in terms of, dietary law, Leviticus chapter 11, but it's not just, abstaining from things that we're not supposed to be eating, but it's also measuring how we eat and consume the things that we are allowed to eat, right? How we behave, what we do, right? Being active as opposed to sedentary. This is a spiritual thing as well. In Leviticus chapter 3, and I'm using another Bible source here, okay? It states, "It shall be a perpetual statute for your generations." This is verse 17. throughout all your dwellings, that ye eat neither fat nor blood. Now, we already know from Leviticus chapter 11, there's certain creatures that we don't eat, but this right here is telling us something about what we can eat and that we shouldn't eat certain things. One of the things about outside is we also have to deal with bugs. It's fine, just a little swat and they're gone. But still, back on topic. We're not to eat blood or not to eat the fat. I know you've seen certain parts in the Bible that talk about the fat. Understand that, like perspective, fat is talking about two different things in the Bible sometimes. Sometimes it's actually talking about the physical, visceral fat of the animal, which in this verse it is. But other times it's talking about the excess, the abundance, right? And it tells you sometimes that you're eating of the fat. And so it's talking about the abundance, right, of your harvest or of all your gains. But here it's actually talking about the visceral fat. And there's reasons why we don't eat those, right? You know, this culture in this society being so backwards, it tells you that the fatty part is the best part. And in fact, you know, we really should not intentionally go to eat visceral fat, right? Like pork belly. We don't eat pork, period. But like that's double wrong, right? We also don't eat blood. A lot of toxins, poisons, and things are in the blood. So you might be eating something that's permissible, but you may be eating it in the wrong way, right? You might be eating a really, really fatty piece of beef, and you shouldn't be eating that. And you wonder why, there's problems with your health. You can't blame the Creator Yahweh for that. It's an issue that you have for not fully understanding, His law. And when we read the book of Daniel and we read about his situation in Babylon, we come to understand that there is good and there is bad, right? The king's meat, that was bad. All the liquor, you don't want to be drinking and eating this stuff in excess, right? You can have some wine, that's fine. But drinking in excess destroys your liver. It leads to poor behaviors, drunkenness. It actually leads to, and it fuels addictive behaviors. Like any kind of addictive substances helps to fuel addictive behaviors. The expectation that you want a certain thing or a certain feeling instantaneously, and addictive substances have a way of giving that to you, and you get used to that. So it's not good. Overeating, overindulging, right? Daniel chapter 1. Verse 4 through 6, 8, 12, and 13. I'm not going to go into that right now, those verses entirely, because we don't have enough time. But as we see, he chose to eat pulse, which is things that are cultivated from the ground, beans, greens, produce, and water, just plain water. And it's just trying to show you that whatever these meats were that the king provided for all of these subjects and liquor was not as good as the produce and water. So just because we're allowed to eat something doesn't mean that we should eat it in excess. Okay? Proverbs chapter 30, verse 8. Proverbs chapter 30, verse 8. It reads, "Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me." What is convenient for you is not convenient for the next person. Verse 9, "Lest I be full and deny thee and say, Who is the Lord Yahweh? Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my God in vain." So we understand that being too full, too fat, too satiated makes us forget the Creator. It's a physical practice that has spiritual implications. Okay? So let's just think about that in terms of our diet, not just, I'm eating kosher. Well, you might be eating kosher, but are you eating too much? Are you eating too little? That's the thing. It's not common, but it's a thing with some people that they begin to shrink too small. and you're not eating enough. There are many things that he permits us to eat that you could eat more of, and you could, improve your health eating these additional things, right? There are a lot of things under the umbrella of what is permitted that we can eat to improve our lives. The second thing, of course, is wealth. And this is something that our people struggle with at times. Sometimes we come into the light and then we become too singularly focused on the spiritual and the spiritual only. And we neglect that aspect of our lives. And then when people look at us, right, they look at the condition and they say, well, I don't want to be anything like them. Whatever wisdom they have, I don't think I want to practice that wisdom because look at how they are. Another aspect of it, I hate to say it, is that, whatever we want for ourselves, we should also want for our brothers and sisters. And sometimes out of jealousy, out of spite, it's a real problem that Israel has. We don't always want the best for our brother and sister. We hold grudges, and we're going to get into that. But for here, when we behave that way and we feel that way and think that way, we're cursed. And then we don't prosper either, right? As a people, the Bible actually tells us about why we as a whole don't prosper. And, in the New Testament talks about how the children of light are many, I'm going to say this in reverse, are foolish sometimes, and the children of darkness are wiser than us when it comes to certain things. And really, like the example of the one we just talked about, Daniel, we should try to be wise in all things, because Daniel was wise and astute in all manners. That's why Yahweh chose him to seal the book. But specifically, the Bible tells us that, and this is something we have been trying to preach to you since day one, that the reason why we don't prosper is because we don't keep his laws. And we were told in Deuteronomy chapter 28 that we would be cursed if we don't keep his laws. In Malachi chapter 3, it reads, "For I am the Lord Yahweh, I change not. Therefore ye sons of Jacob are not consumed. Even from the days of your fathers, ye are gone away from mine ordinances and have not kept them." You see, this is the clause here. You have gone away from my ordinances and you have not kept them. Return unto me, and I will turn unto you, saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts. But ye said, wherein shall we return? And it goes on to talk about the robbery that took place in terms of our offerings. And so let me break that down a little bit. Now, we can frame that in terms of literal tithes and offerings, right? But it goes a little further than that. It details how we're supposed to put Yahweh first. We're supposed to think of him first, and we're supposed to think to show him appreciation with the first fruits. And many of us have stopped doing that. We don't give him praise for all the blessings that come in our life, so he removes those blessings from us. And one of the ways is in finances, because a lot of other things will suffer behind the lack of finances as well. And again, this kind of goes back to jealousy. Sometimes we don't want to pool our resources together because we don't like to see our neighbor prospering. And that is a sad thing. We have to break the cycle of jealousy in Israel. Okay? Now, let's talk very briefly about the spiritual perspective. It's important for us to understand this. In order to be a lawgiver, we have to have a thorough and holistic understanding of the laws of Yahweh. That is something that the gods of this world and all their religions, they do not have. They lack it. They come at it from one angle or they come at it from another angle, but they can't quite understand how to teach it holistically and teach it in a way that doesn't feel like a sermon, that doesn't feel like a lecture, but rather is the advice on how to lead your life, right? Because that's what it's all about. It's advice on how to lead your life properly and righteously, and how this stuff relates to your everyday life, okay? I want to give some examples, right? Because I'm gonna go through, I'm gonna kind of show you what I'm talking about. Let's go to Exodus chapter 23, okay? Exodus chapter 23, we're going to go start at verse 14. It states, 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. Verse 15, thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days as I commanded thee in the time appointed of the month of Bib. For in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. It just taught you something. We're not to appear before him empty. We're not to come empty-handed. It is improper to go to visit someone during an occasion and come empty-handed, right? You don't come as a guest to a great occasion, someone threw, and you come empty-handed. Many people understand that, but our people and their indignants do not understand that. It's prescribed in this particular law. Verse 16, in the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors which thou hast sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field. Verse 17, 3 times in the year all thy males shall appear before the Lord God Yahweh. And of course, as you know from the law, when the males appear, they appear with their household. Everyone within the household serves. 18, thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread. Neither shall the fat of my sacrifice remain until the morning. Again, this is a situation where the word fat means the excess, the leftover, right? The leftover of the lamb. Remember that part of the feast of Passover, where we don't let any of the lamb remain until the next morning? This is what this word fat means. It means the excess, the leftover. You don't let it remain, okay? This is what I mean by holistic understanding, okay? The blood of my sacrifice. Blood means it's grape juice. It means the drink offering. We're not talking about literal blood here. We're not talking about blood sacrifices, okay? And we don't offer that with the leaven. It says leavened bread, but that translation is from chametz, which means the thing which is leavened or leaven, right? It's saying don't offer the grape juice with leaven, aka don't offer wine, fermented grape juice, because leaven is not permitted. So you have the grape juice without leaven. That's what it's referring to. Verse 19, the first of the first fruits of thy land thou shalt bring into the house of the Lord thy God, Yahweh. Thou shalt not see the kid in his mother's milk. Again, I've gone over this. This has nothing to do, as the nations claim, with cooking meat inside of milk. This word seethe means to ripen, right? And you know that whole saying about how a person's green? That means they're inexperienced. They're not there yet. They need more time. So when you ripen something, which is the mean to make it not green anymore, that means to bring it up to speed. And how do you ripen a kid, as to say a baby cow or a baby lamb or a baby goat? You bring it up to speed on its mother's milk by drinking it. It grows. You're not to do that. You're to give the first fruits when they're due. That's what this is talking about. We have to read and understand the Bible so that we can break it down. We can divide the word of truth rightly. This is what separates the family of Yahweh, right? The children of Israel from those who perpetrate the part. For those who have hijacked the book as their book, right? And that ain't just one group of people, okay? 2 Chronicles chapter 30, and I'm just going to turn to this, but We're not going to go through it because it's like 1 through 20. But read this, and this has to do with the keeping of the feast and how they hadn't kept the feast in a very long time. This is evidence to you that the idea that the perfect understanding of the word and how it's broken down, it was always maintained, and the way that people are going about it is the correct way, that's not true. You can read the Bible in multiple places. It will tell you that during these exiles, these situations where we turned our back on the creator Yahweh, we had stopped keeping the law and really stopped understanding the way in which the law was practiced. This is part of the issue that we saw in the New Testament, while the scribes and Pharisees were always at odds with Yehoshua because they did not truly understand the law and the proper application and practice of the law. Their traditions contradicted the law. Okay? So I want to actually bring something up, and this is another example, right? Proverbs chapter 6. I'm out here trying to beat the rain. I think I'll do it. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 30 and 31. It reads, "Men, do not despise a thief if he steal to satisfy his soul when he is hungry." 31, "But if he be found, he shall restore sevenfold. He shall give all the substance of his house." So I know you remember the book stating that you cut off the hand of a thief. And that's true, right? You want to look at that literally. You want to look at that figuratively, right? But also says here, you don't hate a man who steals to satisfy his soul when he's hungry. If you only read one of those things and you guide your policy on punishing theft via just one of these things, there are going to be some injustices done, right? I hate to bring politics in this, but politics seems to intentionally divide people along these philosophical lines as it regards morality, and they like to pit people on two sides of the moral line, where the moral line is between those two things and includes both those things. It includes strictness in the letter of the law as well as mercy and compassion. So if you only chopped off the hands of those who stole, there'd be a lot of people without hands, right? You put people into a situation, or you see people in a situation where they're compelled to steal to satisfy their soul, and then they lose a hand. You would have a very, very resentful society if that's the only way you treated things. But in the flip side, if you treated everybody to where, you stole, okay, we'll let you go, and then you just have to pay back sevenfold. There are a lot of people who would never pay back. They know that, hey, I just have to pay sevenfold back. I'm not going to be punished for it, so I'm never going to pay it back. I'll just keep stealing. And we see this sort of thing happening right here in this country right now, where people are smashing and grabbing because they know that there's not going to be any prosecution in certain parts of this country. Both those two things that we just talked about, chopping off of the hands as well as making them pay back sevenfold if they stole to satisfy their soul, right? The merciful path. Both those things by themselves create issues if you only lean on one or the other. But when you marry them together, you understand that those who are in power, who steal just for greed, there needs to be severe punishment there. They need to be put in a position where they can no longer have the power. That's why you talk about chopping off the hand. Hand is the power to do. They no longer have the power to do the thing that they thought did before, the stealing. You get in the office, you making under the table deals, you're stealing from the public, you will never serve in office ever again. You will never be put into a position of power. You can ever be over or have authority over finances or money unless it's your own. Right? And people who are stealing, things which are necessary for life, have compassion on them. You know, let them go have the opportunity to pay that thing back. And in the process of paying that thing back, they can actually learn a trade so they never have to do it before. I've seen programs in jail where they actually teach men how to build. And these men come right out and then go get well-paying jobs in construction. And it keeps them from ever going back to theft. This is how we need to start understanding the law, looking at it, knowing that there are many ways in which we are to apply the law, and we have to have the wisdom and the thorough understanding of the law so that we can apply the right prescription for the right situation. Lastly, I want to talk about how we treat one another. And this isn't because it's the least important. It's also not because it's the most important, but because I want you to remember this particular one as we navigate social media these days, okay? How we treat one another is pivotal in us as a people healing. It is something that we struggle with even till this day, trusting and loving one another. We have this issue over all people on the face of this planet. And the Bible gives us the remedy to this. We just have to read it, we have to find it, and we have to apply it. I actually want to direct you to Leviticus chapter 19. So let me go ahead and turn to Leviticus chapter 19. And Leviticus chapter 19 talks about a lot of things, but specifically, verse 9 and 10 is actually more proof of what I just got finished talking about holistic viewing of the law. Verse 9 and 10 show you something interesting about how when you grow or you produce an excess, you're not supposed to take the last little bits, right? So I'll tell you how the verse says it. It states, "And when you reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not wholly reap the corners of thy field, neither shalt thou gather the gleanings of the harvest." Keep in mind what it just said, you shall not gather the gleanings of the harvest. "And thou shalt not glean thy vineyard, neither thou gather every grape of the vineyard. Thou shalt leave them for the poor and the stranger. I am the Lord Yahweh, your God." And you say this, so, we're supposed to give out the charity? Okay, that's fine. And you say, well, doesn't it say that if a man doesn't work, neither shall he eat? Pay attention to the verse. It doesn't say that you gather these things for the people. It doesn't say you gather all the grapes and you turn them to grape juice and you give the grape juice to the poor, right? It doesn't say that you gather all the wheat along the edges and you take it and you thresh it and you grind it up and you add yeast to it and you bake it and make bread and give it to the poor. It doesn't say you go up to the trees at the edge of your property, you pick all the fruit and you hand it into a basket to the poor. It says you don't pick them, you leave them for the poor. So that means the poor comes along and they pick it. The poor comes along and they gather the wheat. The poor comes along and they thresh the wheat. The poor comes along and they grind the wheat and they bake the bread. This is what keeps entitlement and waste from occurring. I'm telling you, the prescriptions of the Lord Yahweh solve all of the issues. But let's move on. Verses 11 through 18, it talks to us about issues that exist within cultures and societies, right? And it exists socially, and it kind of destroys the social fabric of a particular group if these things occur. And it tells us not to do this kind of stuff. And these are things you see a lot in the social media era, especially amongst our people. Verse 11, "Ye shall not steal, neither deal falsely, neither lie one to another." We need to be honest and open with one another. We need to be able to trust one another. That is one of the only ways that we as a people are going to heal. We have to do this. Verse 12, "And ye shall not swear by my name falsely, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy God. I am Yahweh." That means we don't make swears upon the name of Yahweh so that people will believe us. Like, oh man, I swear to God, you're swearing so strongly and assuredly to make people believe you, but you're lying. Not only have you lied to them, you tried to gain their trust due to their faith in the Creator Yahweh by using and invoking His name. You understand? There are people who get up to the pulpit and do that. They invoke the name of the Creator or invoke the name of some other figure in order to gain your trust, and you believe it. We're commanded not to do this. Verse 13, thou shalt not defraud thy neighbor, neither rob him. The wages of him that is hired, that means temporary help, people you bring in to do a job real quick, shall not abide with thee all night until the morning. That means when you say you're going to pay them, pay them. Don't hold on to their money and make them wait this long period of time. You got a guy comes and works for you a day or two, pay him for that work. Don't say, oh, well, I pay every 2 weeks, so you'll have to wait 2 weeks from now. No. Give him what is owed to him. Don't hold on to it because you may turn around and not have it. Don't defraud one another, right? That's why this was there, because bringing somebody along who's in desperate need for help, there's the understanding that they're going to get that compensation relatively quickly. So don't defraud one another. Don't say you're going to do something and then don't do it. Don't say you're going to pay your brother and sister back and then you never do. You stop returning calls. You stop answering emails. All of a sudden, you fix in your mind somewhere that person's done something wrong to you and now you got an issue or grudge with them. Don't do this. All these are behaviors that are not befitting of the children of Yahweh. Verse 14, thou shalt not curse the deaf nor put a stumbling block before the blind, but you shall fear thy God. I am Yahweh. Now, this can be looked at in two ways. You see on social media as well, a lot of people pranking one another, pretending this and pretending that, when there are people who are unaware of what you're doing, right? They're blind and deaf to what you're doing. And you got them on camera and you're making jokes and pranking them. And then people are acting out of character because they're being put in this strange novel situation, and then you're doing it for clicks and likes and laughs. You know, in Hebrew culture, we're not pranksters. We don't do that to one another. There's no joy or no comedy in that in our culture. Maybe some cultures it is, but not ours. Also, we're not unkind to those who are down. If a person is blind, you don't put a stumbling block before them they cannot see. You don't place one before them that was not there. If they're deaf, you don't talk about them. You don't gather your words against them and curse them behind their back where they can't see. We don't do these things. These are not honest and straightforward behaviors. Verse 15, ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Pay attention here. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. Notice that when Solomon judged the two women who were having a dispute over the child, he listened to the entire situation, the testimony of both women, and made a wise judgment. Now, he was trying to root out who was lying and who actually cared about the child, who was being truthful about that being their child. And he did that through his wisdom. But in situations, we're not to go ahead and jump to conclusions and regard one person because you favor that particular group. Well, I see the poor and they're always downtrodden, so I'm always going to side with them and claim that they're in the right, and the wealthy or those who have are always in the wrong. We're not to do that. We're to judge every situation for the situation according to righteousness, which is the word, which is the law. Okay, and we're not to regard simply the word of the mighty, right? And so mighty means those who are powerful, but also those who are wealthy. We're not simply to regard them to assume that, oh, they're wealthy and they're powerful because they're right. They're wealthy and they're powerful because they're righteous. No, they may not be. They may be wicked and corrupt. They may be such that, wow, it's that time of year for these bugs. So let's give him a little time to finish this song, and we'll get right back to it. And there we are. So we also don't regard them assuming that they're righteous because they have. Sometimes they have stolen to get everything they've gotten. Sometimes they've sold their soul. So we're to look at situations and people, and we're to judge according to the individual. Okay? Verse 16. Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people, neither shalt thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor. I am the Lord Yahweh. Okay? So we don't go gossiping. And I know a whole lot of that happens on social media. So I'm going to tell you, family, one of the things you do to help improve the spiritual environment within you is that when you see these sorts of things, gossiping and who's this and who's with that and what they're doing, you need to kind of turn away from that kind of content. You don't want to fill your mind with that stuff. You don't want to eat spiritually that stuff. You don't want to fill the tabernacle, the sepulchre in your mind. You don't want to fill the Eucharist with that kind of stuff. It's unclean. The Creator Yahweh does not like it, and it makes it more difficult for Him to visit the tabernacle of your mind and commune with you when it is full of unclean thoughts and unclean offerings. Okay? To stand against the blood of thy neighbor means don't stand against justice. When justice is getting ready to take place, allow justice to take place. Verse 17, thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him. So not hating another in your heart is very important. There's a lot of people who are nasty nice and they fake like people. This is important we don't do this because we harbor hatred within us, especially without cause. That's a dangerous thing. We poison the social fabric of our communities. We can't build and maintain relationships when this sort of thing is occurring. We have to guard ourselves against hatred of our neighbor for no reason. We don't do it in our heart. We talk to one another. Any issues we have, we talk it out openly, we squash it, and we move on. Okay? And it says here as well that you rebuke your neighbor. When you see your neighbor doing something wrong, you rebuke him in righteousness, right? You say, hey, maybe you shouldn't do it that way. You don't want to let sin, the consequences of sin befall him. You want for your brother and sister what you want for yourself. If you want correction so that you can attain righteousness, if you want correction so that you're not living in sin and so that you're not living in fault, you should want that for your brother and sister too. But be careful how we do it. We must do it in love, not in jealousy, not in hatred, not in spite, not in envy, right? Not in looking down or browbeating one another, but in love, in charity. Verse 18. And thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people. What this means is that what we need to do is we need to bring Yahweh in, right? We bring in the law. We bring in the Creator to settle our disputes between us, right? The wise amongst us. And they will judge righteously how a situation should be carried out. That we don't bear any grudges. This is important. There's too much grudge bearing in our community, and many times we don't even know why a grudge is bared against us. This person will up one day and not speak to you, never see them, you haven't called them. They might be living around the corner from you, and you don't know why. This is poisonous to our community, and it's poisonous to the person that's holding that grudge. They don't understand it, but they are poisoning the tabernacle of their mind, and they're destroying their salvation and don't even realize it. But thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord Yahweh. That's the important part. We have to love our neighbor as ourself. And if we follow this in all manners of judgment, right, then most of the time, the vast majority of the time, we will always come out to the right conclusion. And as long as they also love a righteous outcome, then you'll always be happy with this person eventually. You may have a rough situation, but you'll always come around and there'll always be peace between you. So with that being said, family, I thank everyone for being here. I want everyone to read through some of those verses and consider the things that you've been doing in the last year, and consider maybe how you can improve upon those things. Look at your health, look at your wealth, look at your spirituality, the relationship between you and Yahweh, and look at the relationship between you and your neighbor, and look at what could I be doing better. I love you all, family. Thank you for being here. Shalom. Ani Ahab.